Training Ground 44, also known as the Forest of Death, 15 years after the Ninetales attack, Chunin exams. Team 7, one of the rookie groups aiming to rise to Chunin, had been completely overwhelmed by the sudden ambush of a mysterious woman from grass. Whoever she was, she took everything they had thrown at her and effortlessly crushed it, returning every attack with deadly precision. Jutsu after jutsu was countered and dismantled, aided by sinister snake techniques. It was then Naruto finally pieced it together. This wasn't just any opponent, this was Orochimaru of the legendary Sannin. The third Hokage's most twisted disciple, the one who invented many of the combat strategies still taught to rookie ninja squads. Desperate, Naruto attempted to divert the monster's attention long enough for his so-called teammates to retreat. But his plan failed miserably. Not only did his companions refuse to leave, Orochimaru subdued him personally, branding him with a strange seal layered over the one already restraining the Ninetales within. Now, Naruto's body plummeted from one of the towering trees of the forest. Darkness closed in as blood loss consumed him. His final bitter thought as he slipped into unconsciousness, crashing into a crevice at the tree's base, was, "Why did I even bother? It would have been smarter to let Orochimaru do what he wanted, then get my team out when he was gone. Doesn't matter now, I won't be thinking for much longer." Unknown dimension. Groaning, Naruto opened his eyes to a nightmarish realm. A plateau made of bones stretched out beneath him, water flowing endlessly off its edges. Above, crimson clouds poured rain while flashes of black lightning split the sky. Standing calmly before him was a tall figure with swept-back silver hair, wearing a long blue coat marked by a serpent-like design, layered over a vest and dark pants. Brown combat boots grounded his stance. His sharp, icy blue eyes mirrored the fury Naruto sometimes saw in his own reflection. At his side rested a sheathed akatana, its black scabbard bound by a golden ribbon, its handle wrapped in white silk traced with black designs, engraved with elegant markings. The aura around him screamed nobility and overwhelming power. His voice, cold and commanding, broke the silence. "So this is my reincarnation. I expected more." A vein popped on Naruto's forehead as he snapped back. "What the hell are you talking about? Reincarnation? That's nonsense. Everyone knows that's just a fairy tale." The man's expression darkened. With a sharp metallic sound, his blade slid slightly free of its sheath. "If you value the scraps of your existence, be silent. One more word and I will cut you apart, rebirth or not. Do you understand?" Naruto swallowed hard, nodding quickly. The silver-haired swordsman continued. "Good. At least you're capable of listening. As you've likely guessed, you stand at the threshold between life and death. Unlike before, the fox has no influence here. The truth is, we were meant to merge when you were 4. I had no choice then, but now I set conditions. First, you drop that ridiculous mask. You've been acting more like my fool of a brother Dante than the heir to my name." In an instant, Naruto's shocked face shifted into a sharp, calculating one, his true self revealed. He spoke quietly. "How did you know? I thought I had perfected the act. Even the Hokage couldn't see through it." The man smirked. "I am your past life, boy. There's nothing about you I don't know. Second, you will rise to become the most powerful being alive." Naruto nodded in grim acceptance. "Lastly," the man declared, "you will claim my name, Vergil Sparta, and make the world tremble before it once again. To your foes, you shall be a demon greater than divine wrath itself. To those you choose to protect, you will be their guardian angel." Naruto stood awestruck at the speech, unaware that Vergil had rehearsed it countless times to ensure the blonde accepted the bond. Naruto agreed without hesitation. As their merging began, Vergil explained, Naruto would inherit his entire arsenal of skills, bloodline, and strength, far surpassing what Vergil once had. What thrilled Naruto most was the legendary Darkslayer style, along with its devastating power. But before he could ask how long the process would take, the world faded, Vergil along with it, leaving Naruto to awaken once more. Tenmi no Gyuri. When Naruto, or rather, Vergil, regained consciousness, he stood before a familiar sight. The demonic tower, once used to bridge the human and demon realms to seize Sparta's legacy. Or so his past self had attempted. Glancing at his reflection in a nearby pool, he wasn't even shocked to see himself transformed into a near-perfect copy of Vergil. Silver hair, taller frame, now standing at 5'8". Before he could dwell on the change, a pack of black-clad corpses wielding scythes emerged. Vergil's lips curled into a small smile. His calm yet eager tone carried through the air. "Hell prides, at least you'll serve as a warm-up." He surged forward. With elegant brutality, the undead fell, rapid slashes, judgment cuts, and seamless teleports tearing them apart until they crumbled to dust. Vergil scoffed, "Pathetic. If this tower has nothing better, I may die of boredom." Approaching the massive gates, he carved them to ribbons with one swift motion. Inside awaited an icy chamber, guarded by a massive three-headed hound sealed in frost. The beast's eyes snapped open as the ice shattered under Vergil's swing, wounds forming instantly across its body. The guardian roared, "You insolent wretch, you disturbed my slumber. I'll tear you apart." Vergil sneered, vanishing and reappearing behind the beast as he calmly sheathed his blade. "You're in my way, begone." The hound froze mid-snarl, recognizing the scent of Sparta's bloodline. With its last words, it offered itself. "So, a son of Sparta. Very well, boy. Wield me properly, or I will take your life." Its form dissolved into a glowing orb, reshaping into a triple-headed nunchaku infused with ice. Images of Dante wielding it flashed across Vergil's mind. He mused with a smirk. "Impressive, Cerberus, but a weapon like this doesn't suit me. Grant me mastery of ice in taijutsu form instead." The power shifted, molding itself into a martial style where every strike left trails of frost, exploding into spikes at will. Satisfied, Vergil advanced deeper into the tower. Chamber of Wind and Fire Guardians. Half an hour later, Vergil entered a grand hall, only to have two living statues leap down. One blue, headless, wielding a blade with a shrunken head at the pommel. The other nearly identical, but red. The pair argued endlessly, grating on Vergil's patience until it snapped. With a single strike, he froze them both solid in towering glaciers, then shattered their forms with his bare hands, leaving only their swords intact. The weapons spoke with the voices of the slain guardians, pledging their service. Vergil accepted, altering their essence into a new taijutsu augmentation, this time with dominion over fire and wind. Testing combinations against waves of demonic foes, Vergil's smirk grew. Then, without slowing, he pressed onward, ascending the tower step by step. Hall of the Thunder Enchantress. 1 hour later, Vergil took a little longer reaching the next trial, mainly because he had been swallowed by a monstrous abyssal whale. Keeping his usual cold patience, he tore the beast apart from within, annihilating it along with countless hell envies, starved corpses wielding scythes. After that, he climbed his way back toward the chamber of the next guardian. Upon stepping inside, the air filled with a flurry of bats. The setting faintly resembled a decadent parlor, though the aura was anything but welcoming. When the winged swarm dispersed, he saw a figure lounging across a crimson-draped bed. Though he expected as much, the sight still caught him off guard. The entity appeared nearly 6 feet tall, with cascading scarlet hair down to her back, alabaster skin, piercing crimson eyes, and garments that looked to be spun from the bats themselves. Above all else, she was unmistakably female. How could he tell? 2 reasons. First, anyone who had once devised the sexy technique would instinctively recognize a woman's body, except somehow when it came to Sakura. Second, the woman was bare-chested, her long hair covering most but not all, and he could swear the faint outline of her nipples showed through. The demoness, most likely a succubus judging from her presence, rose gracefully and strode toward him. Her crimson gaze traveled over him like hands, making him repress an involuntary shiver. He muttered to himself, "So this is what that Anko woman or that illusionist, Kurenai Yuyuhi, must feel during infiltration assignments or while walking the streets. If that's true, I owe them more credit than I thought for not slaughtering every man in Konoha." Then came her voice, soft, honeyed, dripping with temptation no mortal should resist. "Well now, what have we here? It's been ages since I've gazed upon such a striking man. Tell me, is this your first time?" Vergil bristled at the sultry tone, confirming his suspicion. "Yes, unmistakably a succubus. Damn it all, if the villagers could have learned to let go of their hatred for the Nine Tails, or at least recognize the host was not the beast, I might have developed some resistance to this. But no, an emotionally balanced Jinchuriki was too much to hope for. Fools, I'll simply endure it as best I can." Lost in thought, He barely noticed when the woman reached him, caressing his face and sliding her hands elsewhere. Snapping back, Vergil's voice turned frigid. "Unfortunately, woman, I cannot indulge you. I have unfinished business above, perhaps another time." She chuckled sweetly, then teased, "Oh, are you certain? I could show you pleasures you'd never wish to leave. Why not cast away your burdens with me, handsome?" For an instant, Vergil's determination faltered. But then he vanished in a flash, reappearing beyond her reach. His hand moved toward his blade, stance shifting as he channeled Agni and Rudra's might. His words cut like ice. "I refuse. Stand in my path and you shall fall as the other guardians have." BGM. Devil May Cry 3 OST, Nevan battle theme. The succubus. Nevan laughed melodiously, launching swarms of lightning-infused bats. Vergil weaved between the crackling wings with ease, teleporting to strike her shield and shatter it with a ruthless combo. She blinked away into the alcoves, summoning more bats that discharged bolts of lightning. Vergil swept past them disdainfully, closing the gap with Cerberus's chilling power, freezing her in place before unleashing a merciless assault. Though his strikes landed true, Nevan warped away again, repeating the cycle of summoning and striking. Over and over she pressed the attack, and each time Vergil slipped past her barrage, punishing her with blade and fury. After 2 more exchanges, she abruptly shifted tactics, teleporting to the chamber's center, shrinking to his size, and charging at him as though to embrace him. Only the instinctive warning in his subconscious saved him. He triggered his devil form, unleashing a devastating counter that drove Nevan to her knees. Before she collapsed fatally, Vergil caught her, sparing her skull from cracking against the stone floor. With her bats gone, she lay vulnerable, gazing up as his expression hardened in contemplation. She sighed softly. "So this is it? You'll abandon me here like Vergil Sparta once did. A shame. You may have been my only hope for freedom." Instead, Vergil let out a low laugh. "Who said I'd leave you? From what I recall of my past self, your true form is a guitar. While your powers differ from the Darkslayer's path, I have more than enough skill to wield you. If you desire, you may join me as a weapon, and when you wish, I can release you in your natural form. Do you accept?" Without hesitation, Nevan transformed, tears of joy glimmering before her figure became a sleek purple guitar, its strings alive with lightning, capable of turning into a wicked scythe. Testing its sound, Vergil smirked with approval, then allowed Nevan to rest within his mindscape before pressing forward. Sanctum of the Radiant Guardian. 30 minutes later, the monorail brought him to yet another familiar battleground, the cavernous den of Beowulf. No sooner had he stepped inside than his instincts screamed, forcing him to dodge as the hulking demon crashed down from the ceiling. Beowulf's blinded eye still bore the scar from Dante's blow, but the beast sniffed and growled. "I smell you, spawn of Sparta. I will have vengeance for the sins of your bloodline." With a furious roar, it spread shining white wings, but Vergil had no interest in theatrics. He vanished into the perfected form of Judgment Cut, the same one he had unleashed against Dante before becoming Nilo Angelo, reducing Beowulf to ribbons of gore in an instant. From the remains, a glowing sphere rose and merged into him, forging silver gauntlets and boots coursing with radiant energy. Testing their strikes, he discovered they could channel and amplify the elements of Cerberus and Agnirudra, unlocking new potential. As he strode onward, a sharp smirk curved across his face. With power like this, ruling the world, or perhaps amassing a vast harem, seemed almost trivial. But for now, he focused on escaping the tower. Hall of Inner Shadows. 20 minutes later, after obliterating several bothersome puzzles with raw strength, Vergil entered a vast circular chamber. Darkened spotlights lined the walls, while at the center stood a strange mirror. Etched upon it were words, "Look within me and face your greatest trial. Fail, and you shall forever serve among my legion of shadows." As he finished reading, darkness peeled away from his own shadow, reshaping into a mirrored form. It became a version of himself, yet more akin to Dante's image, forged entirely of shadow. Vergil arched a brow. "I take it you are my challenge?" The shade grinned, cocky. "Exactly. What is Vergil without testing himself against Dante? It would be sacrilege otherwise." Vergil chuckled darkly. "I suppose you're right. Then let us begin, brother." BGM. Devil May Cry 3 Doppelganger theme. The doppelganger lunged with a streak, but Vergil evaded, countering with a slash that passed harmlessly through the shadow. Swearing, he pulled back, until Nevan's whisper revealed the shade's weakness. With a hand sign, he summoned shadow clones, each activating a spotlight at once. Blinding light froze the doppelganger in place, its form flickering into that of a mannequin. In that instant, Vergil and his clones unleashed a synchronized judgment cut, obliterating the imitation completely. From its dispersal flew a dark orb that fused into Vergil, empowering his clones to withstand damage equal to his own, and even share physical experiences if required. Satisfied, the silver-haired warrior ascended higher toward the tower's peak. He knew instinctively there would be a final foe awaiting him at the summit of Tenminuguri. 10 minutes later, Vergil reached the top and discovered a swirling portal leading to an unknown realm. With no other exit from the tower, he chose to step inside. On the other side, he emerged into a strange, liquid-like space that felt part water, part gel. At its center loomed a grotesque, pulsating abomination, best described by checking DEVILMAYCRY. Wiki Arkham under the blobform entry. The grotesque mass shifted its face toward him and spoke in a warped, bubbling voice. "I sense you, child of Sparta. Once I destroy you, I shall reclaim my true form and finally break free of this prison. Prepare yourself, for you will not leave unscathed." Vergil chuckled and formed one of Naruto's, his signature techniques. The shadow clone jutsu. A puff of smoke erupted, and when it cleared, 100 silver-haired sword-wielders stood ready. As they spoke in unison, "We wouldn't be so certain of that." They vanished with air trick, surrounding the blob before unleashing a storm of slashes. When the assault ended, all clones vanished, leaving only the original Vergil. He calmly slid Yamato back into its sheath, and the monster erupted into a spray of ooze, purple ichor, and demonic energy. As the chaos faded, a blade materialized, force edge, a bastard sword with a shimmering silver edge, and a handle resembling a spine capped with a skull pommel, flying straight into Vergil's grip. After a few testing swings, another portal appeared, returning him to the human world. On the other side, he gazed down into a clearing. What he saw ignited his fury. Training Ground 44. Above Tenminuguri's tower, the sight below would chill most of Konoha to the core. In the clearing, 2 Iwa Genin teams, the third already advancing in the exams, knelt before Orochimaru, pledging their village's aid in his invasion. Yet it wasn't this betrayal that sent Naruto's blood boiling. It was the sight of a stripped and bound Anko, offered up as a bargaining chip. The snake Sannin clearly intended to use her to secure Iwa's allegiance, though he hardly needed to. Still, instead of acting rashly, Naruto held back. Despite his power having multiplied tenfold, Orochimaru's experience still gave him an edge. By his estimation, it would take another month before he could crush the Sannin with the same ease he had destroyed the Guardians. When Orochimaru departed, the Iwa Genin moved in to claim their reward. The first boy barely had time to gloat before blood sprayed from his lips, his body collapsing from fatal internal wounds. The other 5 instantly abandoned Anko and formed a defensive circle, prompting Vergil to smirk. Could they make this any simpler? With a flick of Yamato, his judgment slash tore through them. Their bodies were reduced to grotesque heaps of flesh and shattered bones. None who were steeped in corruption could withstand such a strike. Approaching Anko, Vergil noticed her cursed seal glowing blood red, spreading waves of agony through her. Drawing on Vergil's inherited knowledge of seals, recognition struck him. By the blood-soaked Buddhist hells, how did Orochimaru manage to mimic demonic mate marks? Elsewhere with everyone's favorite creep. Orochimaru, after briefing his sound genin, suddenly doubled over with an uncontrollable urge to howl at the sky. "Fuck you, that's HOW." Back with Vergil/Naruto. He recalled only 2 methods of breaking a demonic mate seal. The first was killing the one who placed it, useless now, as the seal was already active. The second, a demon of higher standing had to override it by claiming the victim as their own. Clicking his tongue in annoyance, he muttered, "Perfect, let's hope she's grateful when she wakes up." He sank his teeth into her shoulder, marking her with a stronger seal, just as his mind was yanked into darkness. Within the mindscape, Naruto awoke to a nightmare scene. Anko was being violated by countless serpents, while a more monstrous version of Orochimaru looked on, laughing at the seal's cruelty. Naruto's demeanor shifted into what he called Vergil mode, a war god state. In a blur, he sliced through the snakes, leaving only himself, Anko, and the Sannin's fragment. The Soul Shade sneered, clearly addressing Anko. So, some pitiful fool thinks he can free you. I'll take pleasure in ripping him apart before breaking you entirely. Anko opened her eyes, filled with dread and guilt. Her trembling words struck him. Leva, you can't face that monster. Better I suffer than see someone pure like you slain. Vergil smiled coldly. I appreciate your concern, Proctor-san, but I have my reasons. First, your ability to see souls, rare, belonging only to fallen angels and their kin. Second, this bastard has been violating you, something I detest above nearly all else. Third, he dared threaten me. Fourth, we've already crossed paths once and I never allow a third. Lastly, he irritates me, too much of a coward to remain human. The fragment hissed. Say that again, I dare you. Vergil replied, voice like ice. What, are you deaf? You're a coward, prove me wrong. Enraged, the Shade lunged with the grass cutter, but Vergil sidestepped at the last moment, severed both arms, and beheaded him. 3 spurts of blood marked his end as the soul fragment dissolved. Turning to Anko, who wept tears of relief, Naruto knelt at her level and spoke gently yet firmly. Rest, Anko, that monster won't plague you again. When you wake, seek me out. With that, he vanished from her inner world. Back in reality, as Vergil returned to consciousness, he summoned upgraded shadow clones, gained after his battle at Tenminuguri, to guard Anko. Even if she was an unforeseen mate, his pride as a half-demon demanded he ensure her protection. With the clones in place, he departed toward his teammates. Half an hour later, after several demonic skirmishes, on his journey, Naruto cut down countless minor demons, honing old abilities and testing new ones. Eventually, he arrived just in time to witness Sasuke, under the curse seal's influence, about to kill a sound genin. Knowing that a murder under the seal's sway would damn Sasuke's soul forever, Naruto intervened, erasing the entire sound team in an instant. The shock was palpable. Teams 9, 10, and what remained of Team 7 stared in disbelief at the gore. Their jaws dropped further when a figure, radiating noble power, descended silently from the trees. Sasuke, sharing and flaring, stammered a familiar name. Naruto, that you. Their reactions amused Vergil greatly. Team 10, Ino wavered between awe and denial. Shikamaru froze briefly, then dismissed it as too troublesome to ponder. Choji thought he looked badass but left it at that. Team 9, Lee fainted outright. Neji remained aloof, arrogance intact. Tenten, however, nearly squealed in delight at Yamato. Team 7, Sakura refused to acknowledge that Naruto now outshone her precious Sasuke. And Sasuke himself, scowling like he'd bitten a lemon, only managed to grunt before voicing what everyone thought. What's with the new look, Dobi? Naruto paused for a moment before answering. All I can tell you is that a bloodline is involved. Anything further has to go through the Hokage, so I know what can be spoken about without risking Konoha's safety. The genin didn't like Vergil's vague response, but decided not to push it. Vergil casually stepped toward one of the butchered remains and pulled out the heaven scroll their team required. He glanced back at his group, shaking the blood from the parchment with little care, and said in a flat voice, We've got what we need. Let's head to the tower. Before anyone could argue, Naruto had already begun walking straight toward the central tower. With no other choice, the rest of Team 7 broke into a run after him, but even giving it their all, they couldn't close the distance between them and Naruto. Shikamaru summed it up in his trademark mutter. What a drag! The next day, Central Tower, Training Ground 44 Team 7 soon found themselves inside a vacant classroom. A small note scribbled on the chalkboard instructed them to open their scrolls. The moment they did, Uruka materialized via reverse summoning. He congratulated them for clearing the second exam, then nervously escorted Naruto to the Hokage, so he could finally be briefed on what details he was allowed to share about his newfound bloodline. Temporary Hokage's office, Training Ground 44 30 minutes later, after giving the third Hokage both a concise and detailed account of the forest incident, Naruto began explaining the traits of his bloodline. It came in several layers, each more startling than the last. The first trait enhanced his body to extraordinary levels. Any training he did would now give exponential results. Physically, he was already at Chunin level, But within a month of serious training, his strength could surpass Tsunade's monstrous punches, even without chakra amplification. The second trait was mental. He had gained perfect memory, capable of recalling everything instantly. With his shadow clones studying the archives, he could accumulate knowledge across nearly every subject in existence. The third ability tapped into his very spirit. It was the Devil Trigger, a transformation known among Sparta's descendants. He had multiple tiers of this form, but he usually kept to his level 2 state, which he called the Vergil DT. The final trait merged all others, and was the most dangerous. It allowed him to absorb the essence, skills, and power of any demon he defeated. The third Hokage immediately classified everything beyond the memory ability as S-rank information and dismissed Naruto afterward. Team 7's quarters, Central Tower once dismissed, Naruto headed back to his team's temporary room. He planned to grab a meal later but wanted to wash up first. Entering the showers, he stripped off his dirty clothes and tossed them in a basket, noticing another set already there, Sasuke's. Guess he and Sakura were probably wondering where I vanished to, Naruto thought. Smirking, the reincarnation of Vergil mused, "If the emo bastard pulls anything, I'll just deck him." He strolled into the shower stalls. It's not like he could actually. His thoughts screeched to a halt at the sight in front of him. Standing under the water was Sasuke, humming quietly with eyes shut. That wasn't the shocking part. What froze Naruto was Sasuke's chest, two budding, perky breasts where a flat chest should have been. Against his better sense, Naruto's gaze dropped lower, confirming there was no male anatomy. Relief washed over him. At least he hadn't been caught staring at another guy's junk. The truth clicked instantly. Sasuke wasn't a boy. She was a girl. Realizing the kind of trouble perverts usually faced, Naruto accepted his fate with a grin. If he was going to die, he'd at least die amused, like his past incarnation's brother. With a playful smirk, he said, well, Sasuke, quite the chest you've got there. Didn't know guys grew those. Think mine will start coming in soon?" He chuckled, sealing his doom. Sasuke froze in shock. For years, she had hidden her true gender flawlessly. At the academy, she'd skipped swim days by faking illness. On missions, she had always avoided bathing with the others, using a voice-altering technique from the Uchiha archives to keep her disguise perfect. Nobody ever suspected a thing, but today she wanted a proper shower. She told Sakura she'd join her later at the mess hall and checked the place was empty before entering. She hadn't even heard Naruto arrive. And now here he was, standing with a smug grin and her cheeks reddened, an impressive, toned body on full display. When her eyes drifted down further, her face turned crimson. One word popped into her head about his size. Huge. Snapping back to reality, her embarrassment boiled into rage. She stomped toward him, voice pitched slightly higher than usual. "No, are you too?" Naruto braced himself, closing his eyes. A second later, pain exploded across his body. Tower dorms. Minutes later, Naruto and Sasuke now sat across from each other in silence, both on separate cots. The incident in the shower had forced them to return and confront the truth. Sasuke had removed her bindings, leaving her shirt strained against her chest. She never thought she'd have to explain this secret, especially not to Naruto, her rival and somewhat friend. Naruto, meanwhile, was piecing things together. The clues had been obvious all along, Sasuke avoiding group baths, never swimming, always keeping distance. He sighed, wondering how he hadn't noticed before. Finally, Naruto attempted to break the silence with a cautious grin. "So, how long have you been a girl?" Sasuke deadpanned. "Since the day I was born." Vergil twitched. "Hey, I'm just trying to process this," she snapped back. "Then maybe don't ask stupid questions." He backed down, realizing she was right, and changed tack. "Fine, then why keep it a secret?" She deflected with her own question. "What do you think would happen if an entire clan was wiped out and the only survivor was a girl?" Naruto thought carefully before replying. "Honestly, I'd guess they'd treat you like breeding stock, pairing you with strong shinobi until you produced a male heir. Am I wrong?" Her eyes widened at how quickly he understood. A bitter smile tugged at her lips. "Exactly. If they knew the truth, once I reached childbearing age, they'd force me to have children to continue the clan. A boy would be made heir under the Clan Restoration Act, and after that, who knows what would become of me. Yet the Sandaime wouldn't let that secret get out. He forged official records to make it appear my parents had a son rather than a daughter. With the rest of the Uchiha wiped out in the slaughter, there was no one left to expose the truth except him. But since he's a missing nin, he can't get close enough to reveal anything anyway. Naruto gave a slow nod, absorbing her words before suddenly asking a question she hadn't expected. Then, what's your real name? Her brow furrowed in confusion. What? Naruto exhaled with mild irritation. I asked what your actual name is, the one you had before taking up the mask of Sasuke. She hesitated, weighing if she could place her trust in him. Could she really hand over that part of herself? He was learning so much about her past, while she knew very little of his. Perhaps this could be turned into an exchange. She fixed him with a serious stare. Here's the deal. I'll keep telling you more about myself, but in return, you have to answer any question I ask about you, including about your Kekkei Genkai. Deal? Naruto only gave a casual shrug. Sure, I'm fine with that. He had no real reason to keep lying. The Sandaime had only warned him not to expose the parts about absorbing demons and the devil trigger. He never said anything about the rest. So then, your name? My true name is Tsuki Uchiha. Naruto's lips curved into a grin as he rose from his cot and walked over, extending a hand. Caught off guard, she blinked. What are you doing? He smirked. When people meet someone new, they seal it with a handshake. She frowned. But you already know me. Naruto wagged a finger playfully. Correction, I know Sasuke Uchiha. But just now, I've met Tsuki Uchiha. When she looked at him oddly, he chuckled. You're finally opening up, Tsuki. Before, I only saw the mask you wore as Sasuke. Now I'm looking forward to discovering the real you. He laughed again. Hopefully you're not as uptight as Sasuke was. Her cheeks warmed faintly. She wasn't used to hearing him speak in such a way. Yet he still carried the same dependable aura that made him who he was. It was one of the things she was starting to admire about him. He was the only one who now knew her secret. Maybe someday, Sasuke could disappear. For now, though, the disguise had to remain. Still, having someone to share her truth with felt relieving, even if she didn't appreciate the stick-up-your-ass remark. She scowled. Better that than being the class clown, Doby. Naruto glared right back, their fragile moment broken. Team, he growled. Instead of being insulted, she smiled genuinely, making him blush. Then she whispered almost too softly to hear, Arigato, Naruto. He turned his head away, still pink in the face, but nodded in acknowledgement. Her soft giggle that followed surprised even her. Wait, she actually giggled. That hadn't happened since before the Uchiha slaughter. Not once had she laughed like that since. Could being around Naruto really be breaking her shell apart this quickly? Naruto sat back down, curiosity flashing in his eyes again. Since you're opening up now, tell me this. Do you still want to kill that man you keep referring to? Tsuki's face hardened instantly, her eyes darkening. Yes, but unlike when I act as Sasuke, before I kill him I need to know the true reason. The answer he gave me before didn't feel like his real motive. I'll find out what it actually was. Naruto inclined his head at that. He didn't object to her wanting vengeance. True, revenge only bred more pain, but who was he to deny someone else's justice? He had his own debts to settle. Still, one question nagged at him. Who exactly is this him? Her eyes narrowed sharply. That's none of your concern. Naruto let out a heavy sigh, leaning back. And just like that, we're back to square one. 1 minute she was warm and open, the next she was brooding again. He decided to drop it for now, she'd already revealed plenty today. Still scowling, Tsuki asked, Finished prying into my business? Naruto cracked his neck before answering. Yeah, I'm done. Her expression softened slightly. Good. Because now it's my turn. First question, what happened in the forest of death that gave you a Kekkei Genkai? Naruto's smirk returned. Before I answer, why are you so curious? She crossed her arms. Because one moment you looked like you were about to die. And then suddenly Sakura, and I see you with a new demeanor, stronger than before, and clearly transformed. From what I've seen, it's tied to your body, but I don't know the specifics. His grin didn't fade. Exactly. A shinobi keeps his cards hidden. The less an opponent knows, the stronger you remain. For all I know, I might face you in the next round, so why should I reveal anything? Though she admitted inwardly that he had a point, it still annoyed her. What about that promise of yours to answer my questions, Hem? Planning to break it already? Naruto opened his mouth to reply, but a knock at the door cut him off, followed by an all-too-familiar voice. Sasuke-kun, are you in there? Suki shot him a panicked glance. We'll continue this later, she whispered firmly. Seeing his nod, she quickly added, but what do I do? Sakura can't see me like this. Naruto raised a brow. Then henge into something else. I'll handle distracting her. With no better plan, she darted to his bed and transformed into a small brown box. The door creaked open as Sakura stepped inside. Sasuke-kun, she scanned the room, only spotting Naruto sitting on the bed with one hand resting on the box. He waved casually. His voice was polite, though clearly forced. Hey, Sakura. What's up? As he spoke, his hand shifted on the box, unknowingly pressing against Suki's chest, nearly making her let out a sound. Sakura's eyes roamed the room. Strange, I thought I heard another voice. So what did the Hokage want with you? Naruto gave a clipped reply. Just wanted to talk about some things. Her expression fell, frustration clear in her tone. Why are you acting like this? Naruto chuckled bitterly, his tone sharp. How should I act, Sakura? You never cared before. Everything was always about Sasuke-kun. I never once mattered to you. Sakura's face twisted with guilt. That's not true, Naruto. He snapped, his patience gone. And how am I supposed to believe that? You've done nothing but beat me down my whole life. Her temper flared back. Because you kept pestering me for dates after I told you I wasn't interested. I like Sasuke-kun. Suki nearly groaned inside the box. If Sakura had focused on her training instead of obsessing over her, maybe she wouldn't have been such dead weight. And this crush, it was nothing but a childish obsession. Still, she was shocked hearing this side of Naruto. He had been turned down countless times and even beaten for it. Even she had to admit, he didn't deserve that. For once, Suki found herself actually irritated at Sakura. Meanwhile, Naruto's hand pressed harder against her chest, forcing her to stifle a sound. If he realized, she'd kick him later. Then his low voice reached her. What is it about Sasuke that you like so much? Panic sparked. Would he really expose her secret? If he dared, Sakura blinked at the question. What do you mean? Naruto's frown deepened. I mean, what exactly do you and Ino see in Sasuke Uchiha that the rest of us don't? Even Shikamaru, who's a genius, doesn't get it. Sakura thought for a moment before answering. Because Sasuke-kun is incredible. He's smart, handsome, the last of his clan, and he has this mysterious aura. Why are you laughing, Naruto Baka? Naruto shook his head, still smiling faintly. Because, Sakura, what you just described isn't love, it's just a crush. And honestly, a shallow one at that. What are you trying to say? She asked, irritation seeping through her voice at his doubt over her feelings. I'm saying you're just chasing an idea everyone else planted in your head. That isn't love if you barely know him. He caught the way she opened her mouth to argue, but he cut her off sharply. Sakura, tell me, what's Sasuke's favorite food? She paused, fumbling for an answer. Sasuke-kun, he's never really told me about. Naruto's eyes hardened as he interjected. Sweet dango, that's his favorite. He mentioned it once back in Nami no Kuni to Tsunami-san, who offered to make it for him. He let the silence linger as her eyes widened, then gave a bitter laugh. Funny, isn't it? I don't even get along with Sasuke, yet I know more about him than the girl who claims she loves him. Kind of pathetic, don't you think? Sakura's face flushed pale with anger as she snapped. Shut up, Naruto Baka. That's just one thing I didn't know. Vergil merely shook his head with a mix of scorn and amusement as he turned to leave. Sakura's voice rose again. Where are you going? He looked back over his shoulder, calm and cold. I'm going to train. I need to clear my head, one thing being why I ever liked you to begin with. Without another word, he walked out, leaving Sakura and the hidden Uchiha to their silence. Sakura froze, lost in her thoughts. Naruto was right, she didn't really know Sasuke at all. No matter how hard she tried, Sasuke always pushed her away, distant and cold. What was she doing wrong? And Naruto, there was something different about him now. From their exchange, she realized he wasn't the simple fool she used to think he was. He was complicated, powerful, and carried himself with a chilling calm since his transformation. His presence felt overwhelming, stronger than Sasuke's even. The Naruto she thought she knew would never have said something so cutting, so true. What had changed him so much? For the first time, she found herself wanting to know more. Now she had two enigmas right in her team, Sasuke and Naruto. Rising to her feet, she ran out, determined to start with Sasuke first. As soon as she was gone, Suki released her disguise with a sigh, rewrapping her chest as she muttered. Great, now I've got to deal with her. Can't believe he actually remembered that detail, though. 3 days later, prelims, Naruto had spent the last 3 days training in the underground chambers of the tower, refining his abilities through relentless use of Kage Bunshin. His progress was staggering, especially compared to his old self, back when lazy teachers and a careless Kakashi held him back. With thousands of shadow clones grinding through subjects each day, his growth was inevitable. He also realized something. His old feelings for Sakura weren't love. It was just his desire to belong, to feel normal. But now, merged with Vergil, he understood normalcy was worthless. If people couldn't accept him as he was, then screw them. He didn't need anyone's approval. Now, standing with his team in disguise, he looked over the arena. His sharpened intellect allowed him to size everything up at once. He ignored the Hokage speech, focusing on the competitors instead. Konoha had teams 7 through 10 present, plus Kabutos. Iwa only had a single squad, led by a black-haired girl with striking pink eyes. Mist had a weak group, hardly worth noticing. Suna's Sand siblings were the main threat, while a Rain team was also in attendance. Lastly, there was a squad from Whirlpool, who seemed to be hiding their true strength. As he finished scanning, Naruto casually raised his hand to request 2 matches, which was quickly recorded. Moments later, the first match was announced. Kuretsuchi of Iwa versus Sakura of the Leaf. Arena Vergil watched from above with indifference as Sakura faced her opponent. He didn't care who won as long as it was interesting. But before the fight even began, Sakura sabotaged herself by declaring she was fighting for her beloved Sasuke-kun. From the look on Kuretsuchi's face, it was clear she despised fangirls. When the proctor signaled the start, Kuretsuchi unleashed a massive lava dragon, stunning everyone. The Jonin recognized the technique instantly. Only one Iwa shinobi was known to wield lava release. The genin, meanwhile, stared in shock. Sakura's defeat was instant, not from the attack itself, but because she fainted on the spot. Disgusted, Kuretsuchi simply walked off, muttering with her teammates. "Kuretsuchi-sama, that was reckless. We can't risk Konoha discovering our plan this soon." Naruto caught the whisper with his heightened senses, but tuned out as the next match was called. Naruto Namikaze versus Ganju Kisuhara of Rain. Naruto raised an eyebrow at the red-haired Whirlpool Kunoichi. She looked eerily like his sexy jutsu form, only with red hair and no whisker marks. A stray thought crossed his mind. Could we actually be related? As the fight began, glowing barriers sealed the arena. Suddenly, multiple demons burst forth, killing Ganju and forcing Naruto to defend herself. Naruto considered stepping in, since only he could truly stop them, but she surprised him by biting her finger and activating a seal on her arm. When the smoke cleared, Naruto froze. Rebellion, his past incarnation's brother's blade, was in her hands. The legendary weapon itself. He held back, studying her as she wielded it. She was clumsy compared to Dante, far from mastering it, but the fact she could hold it at all meant she was some form of reincarnation. By the time she cut down the last demon, Vergil had already judged her. She was above average compared to Genin and some Chunin, but still leagues below Zabuza, and Zabuza was nothing compared to him. To the old Naruto, she might have been intimidating. To him now, she was insignificant. The following fights were dull. Sasuke, still under a genjutsu disguise, fought Yori Akado. Sasuke was forced into taijutsu after Yori drained his chakra, but managed to knock him out with the lion combo. Shino annihilated Zaku, rendering his arms and chakra useless. Misumi's strange rubber body was countered by Kankuro's puppets, giving Suna the win. Temari destroyed Tenten with her winds and even broke her back against her fan, only for Guy to stop Lee from attacking in retaliation. Shikamaru easily outmaneuvered Kintsuchi with his shadow technique, slamming her into the wall to finish it. The remaining Uzu and Rock teams ended up killing each other, leaving only Kuretsuchi for Iwa and Naruto for Uzu. Then came the match Naruto had been waiting for, him against Kiba. He only noticed because of Kiba's loud arrogance. "We got this, Akamaru," Naruto smirked inwardly. The fool thought Academy glory mattered here. He purposely delayed entering the arena, knowing it would rile Kiba up. By the time he stepped in, Kiba was trembling with frustration. The match began, and Kiba charged blindly. Instead of finishing it instantly, Vergil toyed with him, dodging with ease and humming a quiet tune, provoking the Inuzuka further. After a few minutes, the silver-haired swordsman in disguise chose to end the bout by slamming his head into Kiba's skull, knocking the loud-mouthed Inuzuka unconscious. When the proctor announced the effortless win, Vergil scanned the audience to gauge both their shock and his potential rivals' responses. Most of the Konoha shinobi were wide-eyed, stunned by how easily he crushed the Inuzuka heir. A few, such as Kurenai, glared openly, fury burning in their eyes for reasons of their own. The foreign ninja, for the most part, looked at him with respect, except Naruto and the red-haired Jonin leading her team, who both shot daggers at him with pure hatred. Brushing aside the unwarranted hostility, since, to his knowledge, he'd done nothing to warrant it, Naruto calmly left the arena as the next fight was called. It was a duel between Hyuga cousins, Hinata and Neji. From the start, Neji targeted Hinata mentally, hammering her with her own insecurities and insisting she had no chance of victory. Naruto clenched his fists, his anger rising. He despised when family preyed on their own. Determined to lift the weight of despair off Hinata's shoulders, he called out, "Hinata-san!" She glanced up toward the balcony at the sound of the hinged blonde's voice. Naruto continued firmly, "Show him he's wrong." Those few words gave Hinata the strength to push back, and she fought with everything she had, forcing Neji to put in real effort. Still, because Kurenai had bobbied her students, Hinata was eventually overpowered. As Neji prepared to land a fatal strike, her Jonin intervened, blocking the blow. Enraged, Neji launched into a rant about the main branch of the clan. Once his tirade ended, Naruto's voice cut through the silence. "I may not return Hinata-san's feelings, nor will I ever, he knows, thanks to his sharpened intellect. But the truth remains, I despise those who torment their own blood. You, Hyuga Neji, are now on my list. Pray to whatever worthless god you worship that we don't meet in the exam." The following match pitted Rock Lee against Ino Yamanaka. It ended almost instantly. Lee, the taijutsu fanatic, floored her with a punch to the stomach in under half a minute. As Ino collapsed, Lee started shouting about all the absurd tasks he would undertake to make up for such a swift victory. Next came Gaara of the Sand against Naruto. The redhead looked caught between manic glee and nervous tension. Most of the Konoha shinobi watched in dread, recalling Team 8's chilling report of Gaara's slaughter during the Forest of Death. Vergil, however, didn't care. An opponent was still an opponent. At the start, Gaara's sand surged forward to consume him. But the instant Naruto sensed the yokai essence within it, he released a faint trace of the Nine-Tails chakra to test a suspicion. As expected, the sand froze, refusing to harm the host of its elder sibling. Fear, not loyalty, held it back. Exploiting this, Naruto placed a kunai at Gaara's throat, forcing the Suna shinobi to surrender. To Vergil, it was a dull fight once he figured out the trick. After both contenders returned to their teams, the Rain Nin faced each other, ending in a quick double knockout. The final battle paired Choji Akimichi against Dasu Kinuta. Initially, Choji wanted to quit, but Asuma bribed him with food if he won. Armed with knowledge of Dasu's sound techniques, Choji launched into human bullet tank and blocked his ears to resist the noise. But Dasu adapted, channeling vibrations through the fluids in Choji's body, and brought him down. With the finalists chosen, they were summoned to the arena floor to draw lots from a box Enko held. Thanks to a subtle genjutsu, Naruto's disguise held. Once the ballots were drawn, the matchups appeared. First match, Naruto Uzumaki vs Naruko Namikaze, second match. Sasuke Uchiha vs Rock Lee, third match. Neji Hyuga vs Kuretsuchi of Iwa, fourth match. Shino Aburame vs Kankuro, Sabaku, fifth match. Temari Sabaku vs Shikamaru Nara vs Dasu Kinuta. With the pairings decided, the genin were dismissed to train for 1 month before the finals. As they left, Vergil studied their expressions. Most showed grim determination, though a few practically vibrated with anticipation. With the Hokage, watching the hopefuls depart, the third Hokage sighed. With the intelligence gathered by both Naruto and Jiraiya, he had no doubt Orochimaru's invasion would strike during the finals. One way or another, the village's future would be decided in that arena, and all he could do was pray Konoha would not falter. Time-skip training begins Konoha streets, outside the hospital. Vergil, still hinged, stared at Kakashi with clear irritation. The reason? Simple. Kakashi had just informed him that he would not be training him for the finals, nor could he arrange a replacement. To Naruto, the timing felt far too convenient. He cut straight through the excuse. "This wouldn't happen to be because my opponent is your sensei's daughter, now would it?" Kakashi looked guilty as he admitted. "Naruto, it's not that I don't want to help you, but Sasuke is going against Guy's best student. If I don't prepare him, Lee will humiliate him, and Guy would never let me live it down. As for finding a substitute, you know the village's opinion of you." "Naruto," Vergil nodded coldly. "I see, not a problem. I have my own abilities to refine. At this point, outside training would only hold me back." Turning to leave, he added over his shoulder, "Do me one favor, sensei. Make sure Sasuke gets the training he needs. Without it, things could end badly." Kakashi froze, paling at the implication. Before he could demand an explanation, Naruto was gone. After a fruitless search, Kakashi calmed himself and mulled over how Naruto could know about Suki. The most ironic possibility crossed his mind: Minato's son and his teammate's niece ending up together. Chuckling at the thought, he returned to the hospital to focus on training Suki for the finals. Forest of Death, Tenminugiri Tower. Half a day later, Naruto entered the tower, mind already turning toward what training would yield the best results. The obvious choice was to focus on fully mastering the powers he'd earned in clearing the tower the first time. He knew how to use the techniques, but not at their peak. Mastery would amplify them tenfold. Though many assumed there was nothing left after the initial clearing, they were mistaken. The tower was not only a passage to the demon world, but also a gateway to a training dimension Sparta himself created for his bloodline. The Bloody Palace. The fragmented memories Vergil inherited were faint, but one thing was clear: only an S-rank shinobi could make it past the 5,000th level. Grinning, Naruto stepped through the portal. The first floor materialized, and as the low-class demons lunged, he smirked. "Power governs all. Without it, you can protect nothing." Training Ground 66, with Kushina, Uzumaki Namikaze, and Naruto, not even yourself. His words echoed through the training field, unnoticed by the two kunoichi. Their blank focus suggested they couldn't even hear Vergil's voice. It was almost as if they were under a trance. The culprit was obvious: the identical pendants hanging from their necks. Anyone skilled enough to sense it would detect faint traces of demonic energy leaking from them, weaving crude yet effective mind control. The real question was, who had crafted such artifacts, and why had they been given to the mother and daughter? With the Sand Trio, the Sand siblings, along with their instructor, faced their own dilemma. Gaara, and by extension the Ikibai, was made completely ineffective as a weapon against Konoha by a single shinobi, someone previously dismissed as irrelevant. Yet it was Gaara's direct revelation that shook them to their core. Shukaku outright refused to battle the boy, declaring that he housed its elder brother. This left the Suna forces in a serious bind. Either they moved forward with the invasion and risked being utterly crushed alongside their Sound and Iwa allies, or they could expose the plot and avoid destruction at the hands of the Kyubai's vessel. Though doing so meant placing themselves at Konoha's mercy, forced to accept whatever retribution the Leaf demanded. The outcome of the Four's debate would reshape history, but for now, it was enough to note that the choice ahead of them promised to be devastating. With Shino at the Aburame compound, the young heir of the Aburame wiped the sweat from his forehead while pausing briefly during his practice. Many would wonder why such a dedicated shinobi needed a rest at all, but today's session was different. Instead of his usual training, Shino was being prepared to fight against puppet users. To that end, his clan had designed advanced seals and chakra thread techniques to mimic the style of puppeteers, an unsettlingly accurate reproduction. If not for his lifelong discipline of suppressing emotions, he might have bolted in terror when they revealed a towering six-armed puppet styled after a samurai. One thing was clear: if this didn't help him succeed in the exams, he'd resort to pulling an Itachi. This would have been a section on Rock Lee's training, but in mercy to the reader, it has been omitted. With Neji, Fate's pawn Hyuga, the Hyuga prodigy felt no urgency to train seriously. After all, destiny itself had already guaranteed his victory. Whatever preparations others made were meaningless in the face of fate, and once he triumphed, he would finally test if fate had decreed it was time to exact revenge on the main branch. Thinking of his father's death, a dark smile crept onto his face. The Hyuga elders would pay dearly. Shikamaru in the Nara training grounds, the lazy genius lay on the ground, eyes fixed on the drifting clouds, as he replayed the preliminary matches in his head. Every opponent had at least some exploitable weakness he could plan for, except Naruto. The blonde's fight had revealed next to nothing, and his brief show of power in the Forest of Death only hinted at potential kenjutsu. And a swift kenjutsu specialist was among the most dangerous opponents a Nara could face. While the clan had devised countermeasures, Shikamaru couldn't shake the suspicion that swordplay wasn't Naruto's only weapon. Kuretsuchi in the Iwa embassy training field, the granddaughter of the third Tsuchikage, let out an irritated sigh in the training yard. The Jonin overseeing the operation claimed she was sufficiently prepared and needed no further drills. While he may have been right, she despised having nothing to do. Sure, she could harass some villagers, or that cursed Namikaze brat, but doing so risked getting barred from missions outside Iwa, something she wasn't willing to chance. And so she remained stuck here, restless and impatient, wishing the month-long break would hurry and end. With Suki, outside Konoha, the Uchiha heiress's eye twitched in irritation as Kakashi described the bizarre and borderline insane training regimen he had prepared for her. While she begrudgingly admitted it might work, she couldn't stop herself from asking, "What about Naruto? Why isn't he here training too?" Kakashi's expression hardened. "He has a program of his own, one I'm not suited to help with. Besides, both of you are competitors. Training together would risk giving one of you a major advantage over the other." Suki wasn't satisfied with the explanation, convinced there was something else being kept from her. But in the shinobi world, suspicion only carried one so far. She'd simply have to wait until she saw Naruto again. Dasu, foreign training grounds. The sound nin groaned as he struggled to make his arms function properly after modifications for extra power. Though grateful that Orochimaru had permitted him and his team to practice using clone techniques against traders of sound, a creeping worry gnawed at him about their master's scheme. If his suspicions were right, then eliminating the Sand siblings and making it appear accidental might be necessary. But that required becoming much stronger first, and step one was fixing his damn arms. Konoha Hot Springs. 1 week before the exam. Oddly enough, Kuretsuchi, Anko Mitarashi, Kurenai Yuyuhi, Naruko Uzumaki Namikaze, and Kushina Uzumaki Namikaze were all gathered in the hot springs, unwinding. Though kunoichi from rival villages would normally clash, an unspoken truce existed around onsens. So for once, they acted almost like ordinary women, even washing each other's backs. Most shinobi knew better than to intrude at such times, but Jiraiya, in pursuit of his research, was perched in a tree scribbling furiously, hoping to wring 3 whole novels worth of inspiration out of this one evening. Unluckily for him, while his concealment jutsu fooled the women, a silver-haired passerby noticed. Mistaking him for Kakashi, he didn't intervene, until the stranger placed a hand on his blade and caused Jiraiya's perch to collapse, dumping him straight into the springs. The women immediately spotted the intruder and gave the toad sage a brutal thrashing. Afterward, they dressed and left, intent on finding whoever had ruined Jiraiya's spy perch. By then, however, all they glimpsed was silver hair and a long blue coat vanishing around a corner. The sight made Anko gasp. "That's him, the one who destroyed the cursed seal and the fragment inside it." The kunoichi rushed after him, but by the time they turned the corner, he had vanished. Each silently swore to uncover who the mysterious swordsman was and why he had acted with no apparent ulterior motive. Chunin Exam Arena. 1 week later, the Chunin hopefuls, minus Dasu, Naruto, and Sasuke, stood in the massive arena awaiting the finals. The stands were packed with nobles, daimyos, and a remarkable number of Konoha shinobi. But most intimidating of all was the presence of 3 of the 5 cages, the 3rd Hokage, 4th Kazekage, and 3rd Tsuchikage. For the rookies, the wait was suffocating. Not only were influential civilians watching, but also some of the most formidable shinobi alive. Failure here meant the end of their advancement. The proctor, unsurprisingly, began with a speech about the exam's importance, largely ignored by the contestants, before announcing the matchups. First match, Naruto Uzumaki vs Naruko Namikaze, second match. Sasuke Uchiha vs Rock Lee, third match. Neji Hyuga vs Kuretsuchi of Iwa, fourth match. Shino Aburame vs Kankuro, Sabaku 5th match. Temari Sabaku vs. Shikamaru Nara. When the name Namikaze rang out, the stadium erupted in cheers. Most celebrated the Yandame's daughter, hoping she would finish her father's legacy by destroying the Kyubai's vessel. So when the proctor ordered everyone but Naruto and Naruto to clear the field, the audience fell silent and waited. But minutes ticked by, and Naruto didn't appear. Just as the proctor prepared to call a forfeit, a massive crystalline-backed toad lumbered in, dazed, with two strangely alluring illusions perched on its antennae. The sight stunned the crowd, especially those like Jiraiya who could feel its demonic presence. But even more shocking was what came next. Naruto strode into the arena clad in ornate armor, Beowulf gauntlets and greaves gleaming, radiating overwhelming power. Then, without hesitation, he launched skyward, driving a knee into the toad. The beast froze solid in an instant before shattering into countless icy fragments. From its ruined head floated a golden orb that shot into Naruto's chest, dissolving in a flash of light, leaving him holding a sealed briefcase inscribed with glowing lines. The young man froze briefly, almost as if lost in thought, before a smirk curved his lips. With a casual flick, he dismissed his newly acquired toy and shifted his gaze toward the senbon-chewing Jonin whose eyes were wide. "Apologies for being late," he said coolly, "but as you just saw, I had to deal with some fool who thought he could take a bite out of me. Now then, shall we begin?" Genma gave a slight nod and raised his voice with the help of a sound amplification technique. The opening bout of the Chunin exam finals, Naruto Uzumaki vs Naruto Namikaze's start. Both heirs of Sparta assumed their chosen stances. Naruto dropped into the poised posture of the legendary strike taijutsu form, yes, from Jade Empire, while Naruto took on a looser stance, ready to strike from any angle without exposing her approach. 2 full minutes passed without either moving an inch. They simply stared, Naruto with calm focus, Naruto with a sharp glare, measuring, analyzing, searching for flaws. Much to the disappointment of Naruto's detractors, it was Naruto who made the opening move. She flung 20 kunai into the air, which rapidly multiplied into 2,000 thanks to the shuriken shadow clone technique. Yet even as the deadly steel storm closed in, Naruto didn't budge. Only when the weapons closed within 30 feet did he thrust his palm forward. A shockwave of compressed air blasted out, vaporizing every single blade in its path, stopping just shy of Naruto herself. The display left the Konoha spectators stunned, as well as the foreign dignitaries. Naruto had never once demonstrated wind affinity techniques, leading some from Suna to wonder if he had somehow stolen Temari's fan methods. Their musings were cut short as Naruto drew blood from her finger, smeared it across her storage seal, and summoned the massive Blade Rebellion, astonishing everyone that someone her age could wield such a weapon. That shock doubled when the red-haired Kunoichi charged recklessly, swinging the colossal sword one-handed with wild ferocity. Yet every slash was effortlessly parried or deflected by the semi-armored, silver-haired swordsman's limbs. Her furious tempo soon wore her down, leaving her winded and wide open. For Vergil, the timing was perfect. He launched into a flurry of precise strikes, kicks and punches aimed to incapacitate rather than kill, though even he couldn't explain why he held back. Instinct, perhaps. His suspicion was confirmed when a kick landed flush on Naruto's face. Instead of collapsing, she staggered briefly, then rose again, an ominous glow surrounding her amulet, radiating a malevolent yellow energy that seeped into the air. The audience panicked instantly, whispering about the Ninetales corrupting the last Namikaze. Even foreign shinobi shifted uncomfortably. Naruto, however, remained unfazed. He had felt the sinister aura pulsing from that amulet throughout the entire battle. Then the real horror arrived. Naruto's body began releasing a thick, violet mist that engulfed the stadium. When it dispersed, standing in her place was a monstrous figure straight from Nightmare. Towering 7 feet tall, wrapped in black and violet demonic armor, with 4 insect-like wings and 2 folded sheaths at its back, its head was pale blue with jagged teeth, crimson eyes, and twisted horns crowning its skull. To the uninformed, it was the perfect image of a demon, terror incarnate. To those with some knowledge of fiendish lore, it was clear they were facing a high-ranking devil. But to true experts, the resemblance was undeniable. The legendary Dark Knight Sparta, which meant Naruto carried his bloodline. Naruto's reaction, however, caught everyone off guard. He laughed, a loud, almost mocking laugh that echoed across the arena. Of course you'd take that shape, Namikaze. You've clearly inherited your father's flair for the impossible. Though honestly, it's probably the amulet forcing you into Sparta's form. Yes, that's it. So drop the act already, Mundus. A booming, sinister laugh answered him. The skies above the Colosseum blackened, crimson lightning crackling as 3 blood-red eyes materialized in the storm. You're sharper than I gave you credit for, brat. But enough with the pretense. Show me your true face, child of the traitor. Vergil arched a brow. Hey, how the hell? Forget it. You've probably got some twisted sensing ability that let you figure me out. Fine then, you want to see my true form, so be it. But once I reveal it, your little puppet won't last a second. He clasped his hands together, forming the dispel seal, and whispered, Kai. Instantly, thick smoke blanketed the field, only to be blown away by Mundus' breath. When it cleared, the crowd collectively gasped. Vergil stood in his true form, clad in the same attire from when he left the tower, Yamato gripped firmly in his gauntleted hand, every inch the deadly warrior he truly was. Cries erupted from the crowd, Naruto's detractors calling for his head, but they were drowned out by the tension of the impending clash. The demonic figure lunged forward, sword swinging like a cleaver meant to split the earth, but the silver-haired fighter met every blow, either evading or countering with precision. Now and then, Vergil answered with a strike of his own, but mostly he let his opponent wear herself out. It was a sound strategy, and soon enough, the strain of transformation and Mundus' relentless control drained her energy dry. Her final attack was halted mid-swing, the massive blade caught in Naruto's armored left hand. His glare burned into Mundus' presence as his voice dripped with venom. Once again, you underestimated Sparta's line. But this time, you've made an even bigger mistake than when you targeted Dante. You've managed to enrage me. And that puts you right behind Orochimaru on my personal kill list. That's a privilege. His grim humor made the crowd sweat drop before he sliced clean through the amulet's chain with a blade of wind, shattering it underfoot. The artifact broke into countless fragments, ending the possession and reverting Naruto back to her human form before she fainted from exhaustion. Before Genma could announce the victor, a red blur streaked across the arena. Most couldn't follow it, but Vergil easily recognized Kushina Namikaze charging him, wearing the same cursed amulet. Without hesitation, he executed a swift judgment cut, cleaving through the trinket. It shattered instantly, leaving Kushina herself unharmed, though she collapsed unconscious. A radiant blue glow enveloped her body, flashing white before fading, revealing a woman identical to the one in Vergil's inherited memories of his former mother. His expression hardened as he snarled toward the skies. Mundus, if this is truly who I believe it is, then congratulations. You've claimed the #1 spot on my Yamato impalement list. The demon lord actually flinched at that before vanishing. With the unconscious Kunoichi carried off and Vergil declared the winner, Genma moved on. Next match, Sasuke Uchiha vs. Rock Lee. Report to the arena floor. Lee dropped down immediately, eager to fight. But Sasuke was nowhere to be found. After a tense minute, a Chunin rushed to Genma's side and whispered something. Genma exhaled sharply and addressed the crowd. Due to circumstances, Sasuke Uchiha and Rock Lee's fight will be postponed until the end of this round. In the meantime, Neji Hyuga and Kuretsuchi of Iwagakure come to the floor. As the two fighters squared off in the stadium, Vergil's shadow clone let out a quiet chuckle to himself. I still can't get over how ingenious the boss scheme was. By letting me step into the tournament instead of him, he bought plenty of time to cut down Orochimaru's troops outside the arena. What really throws me off, though, is how easily Sarutobi just handed over intel about the invasion to him. His inner musings ended abruptly when he realized the round had already concluded. Neji was being hauled away on a stretcher, his lower legs and manhood horribly melted away by the smug Iwa Kunoichi. The clone winced at the sight, muttering under his breath, "Yeah, someone definitely ran their mouth. Let's hope I can take her down before she becomes a bigger problem once Orochimaru's attack kicks off. When Kuretsuchi approached him with a sly smile, the clone couldn't help but feel uneasy. And who wouldn't? The woman strolling toward him had just liquefied her opponent's limbs and pried for reasons he still wasn't sure of. Yet the dark-haired Kunoichi clearly noticed his tension and surprisingly tried to ease it. Relax, I only fried his parts because he thought it was funny to suggest I'd end up his servant. Anyway, just wanted to say congrats on beating the last 2 Namikaze, even if the second one wasn't supposed to count. The clone gave her a silent nod, then turned his gaze toward Kankuro, who had forfeited without even stepping into the fight. The puppet master hadn't wanted to reveal his poisons too early before the invasion. In a voice as cold as ice, the clone remarked, "Didn't think the sand were full of cowards, but I guess that's what you get from a clown who hides behind face paint." Predictably, the jab made Kankuro's blood boil. If not for the orders to maintain their facade of alliance, he would have gladly strangled the cocky swordsman on the spot. Sand had no choice but to go along with the invasion. Since Iwa had committed both of its Jinchuriki, pulling back would be seen as weakness. Still, after what had just happened, maybe that wasn't such a brilliant decision. The outcome was in the hands of the gods now. Chunin Exam Arena. Temari versus Shikamaru. At first it seemed there wouldn't even be a match, since Shikamaru was on the verge of giving up. But Vergil's clone needed to stall for more time, while the original continued cutting down the invasion forces. So he casually kicked the lazy genin straight into the ring. Luckily or unluckily, depending on one's view, the fall didn't injure Shikamaru, but it did shift his mood entirely. Instead of the usual lethargic genius, Temari suddenly faced a highly driven strategist, one who, for some bizarre reason, was also ridiculously aroused. Every move Shikamaru made with his shadow technique carried a second intention, not only to restrain Temari, but also to grope her. The unsettling behavior quickly put the Wind Mistress on edge. Her instincts proved correct when she leapt to dodge one shadow and ended up tangled by others that began touching her in ways that made her squirm. Before the roaming shadows could strip her down, Temari surrendered. Vergil's clone promptly knocked Shikamaru out. Still, the silver-haired demon hunter had the strong suspicion this wouldn't be the last time he encountered Shikamaru the molester. For now, however, he had to keep Temari from tearing the unconscious boy apart. That lasted only until the Kazekage himself intervened, warning her she'd be expelled from the shinobi ranks if she lost control. That calmed her long enough for Naruto to haul Shikamaru back to the stands, far away from the competitors section, where Temari couldn't reach him so easily. Unfortunately, Temari redirected her anger at Naruto instead. Fortunately for him, Kuretsuchi had developed a small, growing interest in his survival and decided to step in, pinning Temari neck-deep into the arena floor with simple Earth-style ninjutsu. The proctor then announced, "The fight between Sasuke Uchiha and Rock Lee begins in 2 minutes. Contestants must be in the ring by then or face disqualification." Lee leapt down instantly, brimming with enthusiasm. But Sasuke was nowhere in sight until the very last seconds. Just before Genma could disqualify him, the disguised Uchiha arrived alongside Kakashi. In a tone dripping with boredom, the imposter spoke. "Apologies for being late. The valley route was flooded, so we had to detour. On the way through another village, mercenaries attacked us. We cut them down easily. Their leader offered his daughters in marriage afterward, but we declined. Then a swarm of crows appeared, somehow warping us to the opposite side of Konoha. From there, the rest of the trip was smooth." The crowd stared in disbelief, stunned that Sasuke had apparently inherited Kakashi's notorious habit of outrageous excuses. Still, no one pressed the matter. Genma raised his voice, amplified by the arena's seals. "The last bout of the preliminaries is about to begin. Sasuke Uchiha, are you ready?" The dark-haired boy nodded and assumed the stance of the interceptor fist. Genma turned to the other side. "Rock Lee, are you ready?" Lee dropped into his strong fist stance, shouting with passion. "Yosh, Proctor-san, my flames of youth shall burn against my greatest rival. If I fail to be a worthy challenge, I will run around the village 50 times while carrying 400 pounds on top of mywhts. And if I cannot..." That was when Vergil snapped, his demonic aura lacing his words. Lee, shut your mouth before I rip out your soul myself to save everyone from your endless yelling. Do I make myself clear, or do I need to spell it out with a blade? Lee bobbed his head frantically in understanding. Guy had taught him that the god of youth was merciful, but even the god's patience didn't extend to angering beings stronger than oneself. And from the aura Vergil gave off, Lee suspected he far surpassed even Guy-sensei. In a subdued voice, he said, "Yes, Proctor, I am ready." Before Genma could call the match, however, thousands of white feathers rained down. A genjutsu had been cast, but the illusion was instantly shattered by a burst of demonic energy from one of Vergil's clones. That blast staggered the enemy infiltrators, leaving them open to a fierce counteroffensive by the Konoha shinobi who had been briefed about the invasion. In that short window, they inflicted heavy losses, with Iwa suffering the most due to the bitter rivalry with Konoha. Meanwhile, Chunin quickly organized the genin into squads for protection and support roles. Elsewhere, Kuretsuchi was subdued by another Vergil clone and whisked to Temen Naiguru, safe from capture by corrupt ANBU. Temari, Kenkuro, and Gaara were likewise knocked out and secured inside the tower. Suddenly, an explosion rocked the cage booth, smoke billowing into the air. Emerging through it were Orochimaru, Anoki, Sarutobi, and the true Vergil himself. The moment their feet touched the arena, a massive crimson barrier rose, sealing them in. Above, where the cage booth had stood, now loomed a grotesque throne of bones and skulls. A towering figure materialized upon it, the only visible feature being a demonic samurai helm seemingly carved from the skull of an ancient warrior. It bellowed, "Ha ha ha, glorious! Battle on, mortals! Fight for the amusement of Lord Shao Kahn, master of mortal combat and entertainer of gods and demons alike." Vergil exhaled in irritation. His memories reminded him Shao Kahn was nothing more than a bizarre spirit obsessed with hosting spectacles across the cosmos. He was tolerated by the gods, so the best option was to play along. The others, lacking that context, glared defiantly at the entity. That lasted only until bolts of crimson lightning rained down from the ceiling, forcing them into combat. They had planned to fight regardless. But now, against their will, their struggle had been turned into little more than a bloody performance for some mad spirit's cosmic audience. The four shinobi immediately selected their opponents without exchanging a single word. The Sandame squared up against his longtime rival Unoki, while Vergil stepped forward to challenge Orochimaru. The elders traded verbal jabs, while the two swordsmen stared each other down. The snake-like man moved first, recklessly lunging with the Kusanagi blade extended, intent on impaling Vergil. Yet, unbeknownst to him, Orochimaru had once more miscalculated. He had dismissed Vergil's true abilities, assuming the silver-haired youth was no more than a skilled jonin, and he would suffer for that arrogance before the day ended. At that moment, though, Vergil felt no need to unleash his full might, choosing instead to indulge his inner demon's cruel amusement by letting Orochimaru believe he had a chance. Vergil effortlessly slipped past Orochimaru's attacks, occasionally parrying when it suited him, his movements calm and deliberate. His counterstrikes were minimal, leaving only shallow wounds on the pale Sannin. This cat-and-mouse routine dragged on for several minutes, the snake man growing increasingly frustrated as his opponent treated the duel like a game. After 2 minutes of this mockery, Orochimaru suddenly tilted his head back and let out a scream. Yamato's wielder thought it was merely rage, but in reality it signaled a shift in the fight's tone. When the serpent's gaze returned, the crazed edge was gone, replaced with a chilling coldness, a darkness that carried a twisted, unnatural essence. In a near whisper, Orochimaru spoke, "You're holding back, boy. The spirit of Yamata no Orochi bound within my sword knows as much. Don't insult me with this pathetic charade." He extended the Kusanagi, stretching it into a monstrous 8-foot blade as his tone deepened. "Come at me with your true strength?" Vergil smirked darkly, replying, "My best. You actually think you'd stand a chance if I fought seriously? Don't be ridiculous. During my month of solitary training, I braved the Bloody Palace, a realm forged by the Dark Knight Sparta to test his bloodline, and faced its final trial. My past incarnation's own father, the one who created that place." Vergil's voice faltered briefly, lost in memory, though Orochimaru didn't press, intrigued instead by the outcome. The serpent spirit confirmed the truth of his words. Vergil continued, The fight barely lasted 10 minutes. He resisted fiercely, but in the end I crushed him at full strength. So tell me, pathetic serpent, do you believe you can stand as my equal? The revelation unsettled Orochimaru, though his pride as a Sannin and wielder of the Orochi's soul prevented him from retreating. That pride proved fatal. Vergil suddenly vanished with air trick, reappearing before the pale madman. In one swift motion, Yamato cleaved through him, splitting body and soul, sending Orochimaru straight to the Shinigami's embrace. With his fall, the barrier entrapping the four collapsed, and Shao Kahn was nowhere to be found. Naruto confirmed the absence before turning his eyes towards Sarutobi and Unoki, only to sweat drop at the sight. The two elderly Kage were lounging beneath one of the few surviving trees, puffing on pipes clearly filled with weed, and casually reading Ika. Between them lay a scroll labeled Peace Treaty Clause M, Third Shinobi War. Just reading the title made Vergil want to kill the stoned old men on principle. He walked over holding the village-wide intercom, which had fallen from the Kage booth earlier, and handed it to Unoki. The Tsuchikage ordered his remaining forces, including his 2 Jinchuriki reserves, to surrender. Most complied, though many sweated nervously at their leader's baked state. A handful refused out of vengeance, but the Jinchuriki swiftly cut them down. Unoki had no intention of continuing the conflict after hearing that the Yondame's son was alive, as the marriage clause of the treaty still bound their future. That left the 2 ancient Kage with the unenviable task of explaining this arrangement to the teens involved, an outcome they weren't confident they would survive, especially after Vergil's casual execution of Orochimaru. Hokage's tower, Konoha had survived the surprise assault from Suna, Sound, and Iwa with little harm. If anything, they had grown stronger, proving once more their position as the supreme village, this time alongside a new legend, Vergil Sparta, the demon slayer. At this moment, Vergil and Kuretsuchi were being restrained by a mass of wooden vines created by Tenzo, barely preventing them from tearing into Unoki and Sarutobi. The cause of their wrath was the very scroll the old men had been poring over earlier. The 2 Kage, normally pillars of authority, now cowered under the suffocating killing intent of the younger shinobi. The sheer malice was so intense that the wooden bindings began withering. Before the vines snapped, Jiraiya arrived, and unfortunately groped Kuretsuchi's breast by accident. Instantly, the pair turned their fury on him. The tower echoed with the sounds of bones breaking and sickening crunches. The perverted sages agonized, almost feminine scream carried far beyond the Hokage's tower, forcing every man nearby to wince in sympathy. Casino, fire country. Meanwhile, in a distant casino, a blonde woman suddenly looked skyward and burst into maniacal laughter. Her companions sweat dropped as patrons rushed out in panic, fearing for their lives. Back at the tower, the Kage and Tenzo cautiously peeked out from behind cover. The once proud Sannin was now a quivering heap of broken flesh, while the 2 furious shinobi stood calm, as though nothing had happened. After making sure the storm had passed, Tenzo muttered quietly to the Kage, "If they come after you again, I'm gone. No amount of pay is worth that beating." Both leaders nodded, still shaken. Vergil finally broke the silence. "Why the hell am I part of this marriage clause? I get Kuretsuchi, she's the Tsuchikage's granddaughter. But aren't both participants supposed to be tied to a cage somehow?" His words trailed off as realization dawned, his face twisting in disbelief. "Oh no, don't tell me I'm related to the 4th, and those idiots from Uzu." The hesitant nods confirmed it. Vergil's eye twitched dangerously as he growled, "I'm going for a long walk. Send anyone after me, and I'll kill them, beat the next with their own limbs, then mail you the heads." Clear. With that, he stormed off, but not before kicking the downed Sannin once more in the groin. Kuretsuchi spat a blob of lava onto Orochimaru's family jewels before leaving too. Moments later, Jiraiya leapt to his feet as if nothing had happened, laughing. "See, Sarutobi-sensei, they took it well enough." Unoki gawked at him. "How are you even alive after that?" The sage grinned. "That wasn't half as bad as Tsunade's punishments back when I could still peek on her. Compared to her, this was child's play." Tenzo blinked, then asked, "Then why didn't you just get up sooner?" With a wistful sigh, Jiraiya explained, "Because if you rise too soon, when they still have rage left, they'll just beat you down twice as hard. Best to play dead. Besides, it gave me a perfect chance to measure their strength for the mission you want me to bring them on." Sarutobi arched an eyebrow, silently prompting the so-called toad sage to expand. Jiraiya obliged with a grin. From what I could gather during that little spar, those two aren't pushovers, though I doubt that's news to you. Naruto's raw strength is sitting at about a quarter of Tsunade's right now, though the gap could shrink drastically with time. His chakra reserves are beyond cage standard, and he's deliberately keeping them under wraps. What's more, his control is sharp. Given enough training, there won't be a single technique out of his reach if he decides to learn it. And lastly, judging from the precision of the strikes he delivered, he's got the mindset to end fights quickly and decisively. Honestly, I'd rank him as an S-class shinobi already and leave it at that. The white-haired man inhaled before continuing. Kuretsuchi, while competent and clearly above average, doesn't measure up the same way. She's dangerous, sure, but compared to Naruto, I'd place her solidly at A rank. The other three shinobi present nodded in agreement with Jiraiya's evaluation, until Sarutobi asked calmly, "So, when will you inform them of their assignment?" Jiraiya twitched at the thought, muttering, "If that kid inherited Kushina's fiery temper, he'll tear me apart if I approach him while he's brooding on his walk. I'll wait until he cools down and comes back." A bandit encampment, forest near Konoha Dato Tsukumi and Gato Xian, two rather forgettable guards for the Black Sun's bandit clan, were passing the time with idle chatter while waiting for their relief. "You know, Dato, this has been one hell of a day. That last caravan we hit had some real pretty girls in it. By the time our shift's over, they'll probably be broken in enough for us to enjoy without any fuss. Boss even rewarded us with gold and a few nice trinkets for years of loyalty. Best part? Not a single shinobi has come nosing around about that missing convoy yet." Dato smirked. "Yeah, it's perfect. Who'd expect a group of so-called lowly bandits to settle right outside a ninja village?" At that moment, faint whistling drifted toward them. The pair turned and spotted a silver-haired young man, walking casually down the path like he owned it, his refined aura standing out like a noble among peasants. Startled but still amused, Gato shouted, "Oi, kid, you're stepping into Black Sun's territory. Since we're feeling generous, we'll let you turn around and leave. Course, you'll have to toss us a handful of coins so we don't get punished for letting you go." "Fair trade, yeah." The youth chuckled darkly. "That might sound fair if I wasn't itching to spill some blood. I just learned I've been dragged into a marriage contract, and frankly, I'm in a foul mood. Here's my offer, you step aside and let me butcher your comrades and I'll spare you. How's that?" The bandits burst out laughing. That was their last mistake. In a blur too fast for human eyes, Vergil sliced both men apart. They didn't even realize they were dead until their torsos slid from their legs, lifeless shock plastered across their faces. With Yamato in hand, Vergil strode into the heart of the camp. Raising his voice above the cries of torment echoing around, he declared, "Greetings, Black Suns. My name is Vergil Sparta. On my walk today, these two fools tried to shake me down. I killed them and now I'm here. I'll give you one chance, surrender peacefully. If you refuse, none of you leave alive." The answer was predictable defiance. What followed was a massacre. When ANBU, led by Jiraiya, finally arrived half an hour later in response to the destroyed caravan, they were horrified by the carnage. The only one standing unscathed was Naruto. Aside from the freed captives, rummaging through supplies and kicking at corpses, Jiraiya could only mutter, confirming his own conclusion. "What exactly happened here, Naruto?" Vergil smirked. "I was walking when those two idiots stopped me. They tried to extort me, so I cut them down. Then I found this camp. I gave them the chance to surrender, they refused, so I killed every last one well except one." A young ANBU, visibly shaken, asked, "And the last one?" Naruto pointed at a corpse slumped against a wall, crossbow still in hand, bolt sticking out of his throat. "He chickened out and died like a coward." Jiraiya's sweat dropped at the casual explanation before clearing his throat. "Anyway, I have a new mission for you and Kuretsuchi. I've already briefed her. The two of you will accompany me to track down Tsunade Senju and persuade her to accept the position of 5th Hokage." Crater City, 30 miles from Konoha, 3 days later the small group made steady progress, though with all the detours to question townsfolk about Tsunade's whereabouts and Jiraiya's constant research. It was painfully slow for Naruto, who could have covered the distance in a single day. The upside was that Vergil got to spend more time with his newly betrothed. even taking Kuretsuchi on what passed as a date in one town. Nothing extravagant, just a fine restaurant that, by chance, served old-world dishes like pizza and barbecue, relics from before Chakra's discovery. For Shinobi, it was a simple but pleasant evening. On their way back, however, a gang of drunk thugs tried to corner Kuretsuchi, demanding her company. She refused, and before they could press further, Yamato silenced them permanently. Kuretsuchi could have handled them herself, but his fierce protectiveness brought a rare smile to her lips. Their journey eventually brought them to Crater City, the second-largest civilian hub on the route. Famous for gambling, it wasn't nearly as renowned as the legendary gambler's paradise only a day's travel further, but it was an obvious stop for someone like Tsunade. Almost immediately, though, their search was derailed. Jirya spotted a beautiful woman, and after handing his companions money with a wink and the usual "don't do anything I wouldn't," wandered off. Vergil smirked once the sage was gone. "That doesn't exactly forbid much, does it?" Kuretsuchi flushed scarlet. "And no, I guess it doesn't." The silver-haired swordsman chuckled softly at her reaction. "So, besides arranging rooms, anything else you'd like to do?" The teasing implication was too much. Kuretsuchi's face went crimson. She developed a nosebleed and fainted outright. Amused, Vergil hoisted her onto his shoulder and carried her to the most luxurious inn in the city. With Jirya unknowingly footing the bill, there was no reason not to indulge. After securing 2 rooms and enduring suspicious glares from the receptionist, he laid Kuretsuchi safely on one bed. Leaving her alone in another room, or worse with Jirya, was unthinkable. Settling on the opposite bed, he unsealed a worn tome, Sparta's Memoirs. He read through the passages describing Sparta's betrayal of Mundus and his war against the legions of hell, but was interrupted by a knock. Assuming it was Jirya returning for a key, he set the book aside and opened the door, only to freeze. Standing there were 2 notorious figures, Kasame Hoshigaki and Itachi Uchiha, clad in black cloaks patterned with crimson clouds. Vergil blinked, shut the door, opened it again, shut it once more, and then opened it a final time, still the same scene staring back at him. After confirming what he was witnessing wasn't an illusion with a quick dispel, he sighed and muttered, "Troublesome," before addressing the 2 infamous S-rank shinobi. "So, what's the supposed privilege of you 2 showing up here?" Kasame flashed a grin filled with sharp teeth. "Looks like the brat already knows who we are. Huh, Itachi." The older Uchiha gave a grunt eerily similar to the way his younger sibling's hinged form would react, then turned his gaze toward the wary silver-haired youth. "Naruto-san, you'll be coming with us. Our leader wishes to speak with you." Naruto's trickster side surfaced as he smirked and replied, "Apologies, Itachi-san, but I'll pass. The orphanage matron drilled it into me not to go wandering off with strangers, and honestly, I don't feel like being jumped by a group of creeps today. So, goodbye." With that, he slammed the door shut on the stunned Akatsuki pair. Kasame blinked, then looked to his partner in disbelief. "Did he really just say that?" Itachi's eyes narrowed dangerously. "Kasame, break the door. We've wasted enough time with manners, let's take him." The shark-like swordsman smirked, lifted his leg, and smashed through the door with full force, splintering it apart. But he immediately leapt back as a barrage of spectral swords burst outward in a deadly storm. Kasame let out a low chuckle. "Kid doesn't hold back. Any ideas, Itachi?" "Those blades don't look like they're letting up." The Uchiha frowned briefly, then his expression shifted as a thought clicked. "Kasame, what does Samehada tell you about the nature of those weapons?" The blue-skinned man looked puzzled at first, then snatched one sword midair and pressed it against Samehada. The living blade eagerly devoured the energy. Kasame laughed darkly. "Heth, seems it enjoys the flavor. Here, Samehada is reworked to feast on demonic energy rather than reject it, making it even more effective against Jinchuriki and their chakra." Itachi calmly suggested that Kasame use the blade to shield them while they closed in. Kasame grinned wide at the prospect of feeding his weapon even more potent chakra. Executing the plan, the 2 quickly pressed forward and struck. But the Naruto they caught vanished in a puff of smoke. Itachi scowled. "A clone. Where's the real one?" Kasame spotted movement at the window. The silver-haired boy carrying Kuretsuchi and another figure resembling a younger, eyeliner-free Itachi. "Oi, Itachi, the brat's on the move. He's hauling 2 passengers with him." Itachi approached the window, his stoic mask slipping just enough to twitch at the sight of his sibling carried off like baggage. His voice was icy as he said, "Come, Kasame. We have prey to catch and a foolish sibling who needs reminding of his duty." Kasame chuckled, trailing behind. "Still set on pushing the kid to awaken stronger eyes so you can take them for yourself." The Uchiha's lips curved into a cold smile. "If he cannot stand against me, I'll take them. If he proves himself, I'll allow him to live a while longer. Either way, those eyes will be mine in time." Meanwhile, Vergil, having fled only to avoid putting Kuretsuchi at risk, split off 2 clones to escort the Kunoichi far from danger. He then sought a fitting battleground to face the Akatsuki directly. He settled on a wide clearing, uncannily reminiscent of Training Ground 7. Sitting cross-legged with his blade across his lap, he steadied his focus, mentally preparing to crush his foes. Elsewhere with Jirya, the Sannin had just realized his card was stolen, suspecting his companion's lodging. Yet by the time he reached the hotel, the woman was already trapped in a high-level genjutsu. Arrogance made him assume it was a simple reconnaissance attempt, not a ploy to reach his team. But when he saw 2 of Vergil's clones rushing past with Sasuke and Kuretsuchi in tow, he realized too late that he had misjudged. After a quick exchange with the clones, he dashed toward the battlefield, desperate to intervene. Back in the clearing, Vergil didn't even open his eyes when the missing nin entered, his tone calm and cold. "Welcome. Shall we begin?" Itachi, composed once more, made a final attempt. "Naruto-san, surrender. If you do, I personally guarantee your safety." The silver-haired warrior scoffed. "You should know better than to try lying to me, Itachi. Enough words. Let our blades decide." Just outside Crater City, the 3 fighters instinctively positioned themselves like gunslingers in an old Western standoff, 2 against 1. The arrangement looked to favor Itachi and Kasame, forcing their opponent to divide his focus. But Naruto, no ordinary shinobi, was unlike anyone of the current era. Compared to the demonic clans of his lineage's past, today's so-called S-ranks would barely rank average. To Vergil's slight interest, Itachi infused chakra into a seal and drew an ANBU-style blade, likely upgraded over the years with seals and enhanced steel, strong enough to rival the Mist's legendary swords. Kasame grinned at the display. "So, Itachi, planning to make this a sword fight?" The elder Uchiha's lips twitched subtly. "It would be discourteous otherwise, since both of you fight with blades." Kasame bared his teeth in delight, but Vergil raised an eyebrow, unimpressed. His mastery of kenjutsu, specifically the Dark Slayer style, far eclipsed anything they could imagine. Insert Fate Zero OSD. The battle is to the strong. He let some of his demonic heritage slip free, conjuring a crimson cage of energy to trap them within, barring escape or interruption. Though momentarily caught off guard, the veterans recovered quickly, tightening their stance. They still underestimated him. Kasame struck first, charging with Samehada in a heavy downward slash. Vergil caught it effortlessly with his katana. While they clashed, Itachi hung back, studying his opponent's movements. The Uchiha noted that Vergil's style revolved around sheer speed. Normally, such rapid strikes would lack force, yet they met Kasame's monstrous strength head-on. After minutes of stalemate, Itachi decided he'd seen enough. Channeling wind chakra into his blade, he unleashed a flurry of razor-sharp gusts meant to disable. But Vergil, without even glancing away from Kasame, countered with an equal storm of spectral slashes. Seizing the moment of shock, he slipped past Kasame's guard and severed the swordsman's right hand, sending Samehada falling. But before he could press the advantage, Itachi closed in at blinding speed. Naruto barely managed to block, only to be kicked hard in the gut by the enraged, one-handed Kasame. The blow launched him 20 feet back, though his reflexes saved him from Itachi's follow-up and Kasame's desperate swing. Every strike the two launched his way, he either sidestepped or blocked with precision. Normally, he would have retaliated by now, but this was the most important trial of his skills so far. Because of that, he refused to rely on his more advanced techniques to take shortcuts in what he considered his first real test of strength. He quickly realized that while he could hold his own against the 2 rogue shinobi without unleashing counterattacks or using the deadlier and more refined techniques of the Dark Slayer, his power was still far from what he needed to accomplish his true objectives, and nowhere close to being enough to face Mundus, his lord, and the massive demonic horde in the underworld, and come out victorious. Itachi, however, had grown weary of the stalemate and decided to bend the rules. His excuse fell back on the old phrase, "If you're not cheating, you're not really trying." With that in mind, he activated Tsukuyomi on Naruto the first chance he had. This was the scene Jiraiya walked in on. His traveling partner and Itachi locked in a silent standoff, while a one-armed Kisame glared daggers at the silver-haired youth for severing his limb. Jiraiya tried to approach close enough to intervene, but a familiar demonic barrier snapped into place around the battlefield. It didn't take him long to figure out that the only way it would vanish was if the one maintaining it chose to drop it. Inside Vergil's mindscape, currently, Itachi was fleeing like a frightened animal. The reason was obvious. He had not expected Naruto to carry the souls of countless high-ranking demons within him. As a result, the entire arsenal of demon spirits Naruto had gathered during his short time in Tenmi, no Gyuri now chased him relentlessly with the intent to tear him apart. All the while, Naruto sat comfortably, laughing, casually eating a giant bowl of ramen that tasted suspiciously of buttered popcorn, which he had conjured in his mental world. Hours seemed to pass as Itachi ran, until fatigue finally crept in. That was when it struck him. He was still maintaining Tsukuyomi. Realizing this, he quickly deactivated it. As soon as the illusion ended, Vergil broke into uncontrollable laughter. "Thanks for the fun, everyone. I'll make sure I figure out a way to give you physical forms again when I get the chance. Consider it my reward." The last thing Vergil saw before consciousness returned was the collection of demons grinning wickedly at him, though Nevin's expression held a sultry undertone that made him involuntarily shiver in anticipation. Back to reality, when he came to, it was clear Itachi was utterly drained from his failed attempt, and Kisame was nowhere near his full strength with only one hand. His logical mind told him to finish them both here. His demonic instincts demanded that killing them now, when they were weak, would be a hollow victory. And a small sliver of the old Naruto inside urged him to spare them, leaving their fate to Satsuki when she was strong enough to claim vengeance herself. With two voices against one, he chose to release them. With a single thought, the barrier dissolved. The two Akatsuki wasted no time fleeing before Jiraiya could even interfere. Before the older man could scold or question him, Naruto smirked. "One of the clones I set up when we first left camp just dispelled. It found Tsunade. She's at the Golden Pig Casino and Hotel, though she's heading toward a sake house now. Which one, I'm not sure, but at least we know she's here." Jiraiya chuckled as they started moving. "At this rate, you're shaping up to be quite the spy master, Naruto. Still, don't you think things are a little too easy?" Vergil shot him a sidelong glance and replied, "Yes, ever since my upgrade, I've been feeling that way more often. Sometimes it almost feels like I've turned into one of those cliché overpowered characters in a fanfiction." Elsewhere, in a secret facility, a strange gremlin-like brown creature nearly collapsed from panic as he scrambled up from his monitoring station. "Crap, he's starting to figure it out. I gotta tell Damasta." He sprinted toward his lord's chamber, only to be told that it was nothing to worry about, that such suspicions were a common trope in fanfics and nothing worth panicking over. Back to the Naruto verse, Jiraiya gave a nod of agreement with his companion. "Anyway, we'd better move before Tsunade disappears on us again." The silver-haired swordsman acknowledged with a short nod before unleashing hundreds of clones to scour the massive city for the specific sake Tsunade was headed toward. A street in Crater City. 5 minutes later, Vergil and Jiraiya, with Kuretsuchi and a henged Satsuki in tow, made their way down the city's main thoroughfare. The girls were mildly irritated with the swordsman, though after he explained knocking them out had been to give him room to fight, and that he spared Itachi for Satsuki's future vengeance, they begrudgingly forgave him, on the condition that he funded their shopping spree later. The road they walked wasn't the main one because of geography, but because it was lined with bars, restaurants, and everything else that kept a city lively. In a shinobi village, it would be the merchant district. Here, it was simply the heart of the city. It didn't take long before Naruto overheard two frustrated locals grumbling about a blonde drunk with monstrous strength, who had tossed them out of their favorite hangout, the Willow Tree Bar. Instantly realizing they meant Tsunade, he informed the group, and they all headed in that direction at a brisk but controlled pace. Within minutes, they reached the establishment. As soon as they entered, Juria's eyes locked on his teammate and her apprentice. Both seemed at ease, but any seasoned shinobi knew relaxation was only surface level. Vergil, unwilling to take chances, quietly erected an invisible barrier like the one used against Itachi and Kasame, designed to prevent Tsunade and her companion from leaving. He then turned his attention to the exchange between the two Sannin. Tsunade's dismissive attitude was grating enough, but when she insulted all the past Hokage, including his father, Vergil's patience snapped. He might not care much for the Hokage title itself, or hold deep affection for a father he'd never truly bonded with, but he still respected the cage for their unmatched strength. He finally interjected. "Juria, are you sure this is the one Konoha needs as Hokage? She despises the position itself and has the gall to mock every single cage in history." Juria froze, shocked by the blatant disrespect. He was about to smooth things over before Tsunade's legendary temper exploded, her grip shattering her sake saucer. "What the hell did you just say, brat?" The silver-haired swordsman gave a dismissive snort, ignoring Juria's frantic signals to stop. "Are you deaf as well as foolish? I said you're an idiot for mocking every cage with your careless mouth." Tsunade roared with fury. "That's it. Outside, brat. I'm going to pulverize you." Vergil's cold smile spread as he stood, unfazed by her fury. Clearly, this woman was both reckless and arrogant, traits he could easily exploit. "Are you sure about that? You're drunker than a skunk." That last comment, on top of his earlier mockery, was the final straw. Tsunade threw a furious punch at his head. He casually tilted aside, letting it miss, before driving the sheath of his sword into her stomach. Ordinarily, such a strike would barely faze a seasoned ninja. But Naruto was anything but ordinary, and his sheath was forged from the same material as Yamato. The force launched Tsunade through the nearest wall, leaving a perfect human-shaped hole and shocking every witness inside. While the others gaped, the silver-haired warrior calmly strode to the broken wall. With a casual thought, he shifted the debris to make it look like the structure had simply collapsed. He stepped outside, waiting as Tsunade staggered up to her feet, shaking off the haze of her drunken state. To her credit, she recovered in under a minute, an impressive feat considering the blow was equivalent to being crushed by a tank dropped from the sky. Vergil gave a slow, sarcastic clap at her resilience, which only reignited her explosive temper. Snarling, she charged with all her speed and power, aiming to tear his head from his shoulders. To most, her speed was overwhelming. To Naruto, it was sluggish. He leaned casually aside and drove his knee into her gut, this time moving with unmatched swiftness but holding back most of his strength. Even so, the blow hurled her clear across town, crashing into the walls of a castle 5 minutes outside the city, nearly demolishing part of it from sheer impact. While he waited, Vergil ordered a bottle of water along with a small plate of teriyaki beef to pass the time. Meanwhile, those who actually realized who she was were shocked at how brutally the once legendary woman was being dominated by someone they barely knew. By the time Tsunade, bruised and bloodied, dragged herself back into the area nearly 10 minutes later, the silver-haired youth had already polished off 2 more bottles of water and 3 additional servings of teriyaki beef. He was more than ready to continue, humbling the arrogant blonde further. Still, much of Tsunade's earlier fire had been beaten out of her. Not enough to stop her from fighting again, but enough to make her approach more cautiously. When she reappeared, she opened with a flurry of kunai, swiftly following up with a shadow kunai technique, then raising several earth walls to buy herself both protection and offensive space. Under normal conditions, that sort of layered assault would have been a solid start for a high-tier shinobi duel. But Naruto wasn't interested in letting her dictate the pace. With one lightning-fast draw and resheathing of his blade, he obliterated the entire set of defenses and weapons in an instant. After that, he walked toward Tsunade unhurriedly, cutting through every tactic she tried with effortless destruction, while she scrambled for some way to halt his advance. 15 minutes later, the cornered Sannin was running on empty. Between launching countless jutsu, healing herself, and keeping her body reinforced with chakra, her reserves were almost gone, a problem that wouldn't exist for a Jinchuriki or someone with a tailed beast's endless supply. She had also run out of strategies. Luckily for her, Vergil never saw her as a true opponent. He simply wanted an apology for the insult she had thrown at him earlier. When Naruto demanded she take back her words, Tsunade did so bitterly, only yielding because he clearly outclassed her. As soon as he sheathed his blade, though, her vengeful streak reminded her that Jiraiya had introduced him as more of a part-time student than a full disciple, someone who only picked up what he could from occasional lessons. So with a smirk she taunted, "Oi, brat, how about a wager?" Jiraiya moved to stop her, but a glare from Vergil's fiancé silenced him immediately. Raising a brow, the young swordsman answered the busty medic Nin. "And what kind of bet did you have in mind?" Tsunade grinned slightly. "Jiraiya mentioned he shows you a few jutsu every now and then. That true?" When Vergil gave the smallest of nods, she continued, "Then here it is. If you can master the Rasengan in a single week, I'll return to Konoha without resistance. But if you fail, you'll hand over every last coin you've got." The son of Sparta chuckled at the offer. "That's amusing, but I gain nothing from it." Her eyes narrowed as she considered alternatives. Soon, her hand moved to her necklace, the one she'd long believed cursed, but still priceless beyond compare. Speaking with a hint of hesitation, she declared, "If you succeed, this pendant is yours. A Senju heirloom worth more than every casino in all of Tanzaku town." Vergil pondered. He wasn't hurting for funds. He already had Orochimaru's bounty and full access to the Namikaze fortune. But a relic of that magnitude would serve as either a treasured gift for someone he valued or a safety net for his clan should the world's economy collapse. A shinobi, after all, always needs contingencies. Finally, he answered, "Very well, Tsunade-san, I accept. Jiraiya, you've got a technique to show me." With that, the four shinobi departed, leaving the medics behind as they made their way to the inn. The next morning, a forest outside the city, Jiraiya smacked Naruto on the back of the head, using his big head jutsu out of sheer frustration. "You idiot! Why would you take Tsunade's challenge? She's setting you up to lose. No one's ever learned the Rasengan in less than 3 months." And Vergil shot him a dark glare. "Hit me again without cause, Toad Sage, and you'll lose an arm. As for the bet, yes, it would be impossible for most. But for me, failure isn't an option. Now get on with teaching me, Jiraiya-san, and while you're at it, you might want to give Kuretsuchi and Satsuki something to practice as well." The perverted sage was about to argue, until the tree beside him shattered under a spike of earth, and flaming Kunai barely missed his groin. Sufficiently motivated, he sent out 2 shadow clones to help the dangerously skilled Kunoichi sharpen their abilities further. Probably not the wisest plan, but survival left little room for better choices. Once the clones and Kunoichi left, Jiraiya demonstrated the technique to Naruto. At first glance, the Rasengan appeared simple, just a sphere of chakra. But the moment Vergil looked closer, he realized the brilliance hidden within. It was far more advanced than anyone could imagine. A destructive grinding and piercing force packed into one deceptively compact attack. For ordinary shinobi, mastering it could take months, maybe years. It could also be adapted with different elements, turned into a fiery explosive or a wind-powered buzzsaw of death. Yet, in truth, it was meant to resonate perfectly with devil trigger energy. As far as he had ever known, his father was nothing more than an ordinary human. That made it strange to think that the man had designed something that seemed to function better with DT energy than with chakra itself. Maybe, just maybe, his father had anticipated what he would become one day and created that technique with his future in mind. Still, there was no way of proving such a theory, so he brushed aside the swirling thoughts and instead concentrated on the procedure required to shape the jutsu properly. 3 days later, Golden Crane Restaurant Naruto sat in one of the finest establishments in the gambling district, sharing a lavish dinner with his fiancée and his Uchiha companion. His order was massive, a 3-pound Kobe beef steak, fried rice, and a bottle of the restaurant's prized Junmai Jinjoshu, one of the best steaks in existence. Kuretsuchi chose a platter of sushi along with a 12-ounce swordfish steak, while Satsuki enjoyed a surf and turf dish consisting of bluefin tuna paired with chicken breast. Their conversation drifted across casual topics, preferences, childhood stories, and moments from the past. Unexpected revelations surfaced too. Kuretsuchi revealed she had learned flute as a girl and could still play beautifully. Satsuki, embarrassed but coaxed, admitted she had a lovely singing voice thanks to lessons from her mother, which she had practiced diligently in her memory. And Vergil himself was skilled with a guitar, thanks to housing Nevan after defeating her, and the two Kunoichi speculated he might be just as adept at a shamisen. Before the talk could go deeper, a loud disturbance broke out. They turned their heads to see a cliché group of Yakuza hooligans trashing the restaurant while extorting the owner for money. Ordinarily, the three would have waited until the criminals left and then tracked them down to recover years' worth of stolen protection money. But one thug made the grave mistake of groping Satsuki under the guise of searching for valuables. Naruto, calmly finishing his meal as they warned him to stay seated, simply observed while the Uchiha and the Tsuchikige's granddaughter unleashed fury on the gangsters. By the time the silver-haired man drained the last of his sake, the restaurant was wrecked. Broken thugs littered the floor, one embedded headfirst into the ceiling, several others smashed into the bar's wooden panels. It was chaos incarnate. Their companion finally rose, walked to the counter where the owner was both scolding and thanking the Kunoichi, and tossed him a bag of gold coins with a smirk to cover damages. As they left, a low chuckle escaped Vergil. "So, you two enjoy yourselves." Both Kunoichi flushed and smacked his shoulders playfully for the jab. Day of the bet. Naruto, his companions, and his temporary mentor made their way through the gambling town to meet Tsunade and prove he had fulfilled the wager. It had taken him days to refine the technique with enough force to be worth adding to his arsenal. By the fourth day, he had the form mastered, but its power output was weak. He only discovered why by chance. After overexerting himself and collapsing from chakra fatigue, he found himself in his mindscape before his predecessor. The original Vergil, mildly amused but hardly surprised, noted that his reincarnation trained the same way he once had. Recklessly, he explained that Naruto's problem lay in trying to balance too many skills at once. And Vergil could only dedicate himself fully to one path, either Darkslayer or ninjutsu. The path not chosen could still be dabbled in, but new abilities in that area would overwrite old ones, so choices had to be deliberate. After much thought, Naruto chose to relinquish most ninjutsu, except those already ingrained and too valuable to discard, replacing the Bunshin jutsu with the Rasengan. His predecessor assured him that chakra control and modifications of his existing techniques were still possible, but nothing beyond that without sacrifice. From then, he perfected the Rasengan and even began shaping a version that mirrored his spectral blades. It wasn't battle-ready yet, since making it hold form and function anywhere was a complicated task. But as it stood, he could manifest them within 10 meters, control them up to 15, and manage 6 at a time before strain caught up. When the group reached Tsunade's lodging, they were ambushed by 4 armored figures with wings and lances, angelos, as Naruto recalled from Vergil's memories. These possessed armors had once served the Order of the Sword, and later Mundus. The battle was brief. Seasoned fighters dispatched them easily. Yet inside the inn, a grisly sight awaited: civilians impaled on lances, victims of the angelos, and an enraged Tsunade clashing with a snake-like demon that stirred recognition. Only when its cruel laughter rang out did they realize the truth: Orochimaru, resurrected. Jiraiya was shaken to see his old teammate's transformation, but the others wasted no time engaging. Death had enhanced Orochimaru's body, his agility surpassing even Naruto's Darkslayer level. He toyed with them, jeering at their inadequacy and tempting Satsuki with promises of power. But the Uchiha heiress refused. Vanity and pride outweighed ambition. What good was strength if it left her a grotesque monster unable to rebuild her clan? Orochimaru's rage was cut short as a swarm of spiraling Rasengans converged on him. He barely dodged, still taking 3 direct hits and losing an arm. Though his demonic body regenerated, the damage forced him into retreat. Just as he vanished, Vergil collapsed, drained from pushing his experimental technique so far. While Kuretsuchi and Satsuki fretted over him, Jiraiya laughed heartily at the display, until sobering enough to remind Tsunade of her lost wager. Their private side bet meant she would return to Konoha as Hokage if Naruto's victory proved extraordinary. Tsunade protested, claiming drunkenness, but Shizun's glare silenced her. Shizun held enough leverage to make her life miserable if she refused. Reluctantly, Tsunade accepted. She had no real choice. With Orochimaru, 5 minutes later, the serpent-turned demon growled as the holes in his torso knitted shut. Mundus had tasked him with eliminating Tsunade as a trial run for his rebirth. Victory had been within reach if not for Sparta's interference. Stronger than ever and not yet acclimated to his body, Orochimaru knew that once he refined these gifts, he would become a truly terrifying weapon, something Mundus was all too eager to cultivate.